Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. These are all my June and July pre-orders, plus one volume I picked up in person. And as usual, I've read all these volumes. Starting with Yona of the Dawn, volume 44, some pretty high tension events are going on in this current arc that makes you wonder about some characters' motives. I've continued to keep up with this series as it releases, so all I'm really hoping for is a satisfying ending and then a bit more, because my favorite moments in Yona of the Dawn are when the Happy Hungry Bunch and Dark Dragon are traveling around together and all their shenanigans. So if we come full circle with something happy like that, and of course some Hawk and Yona moments, then this will continue to be an exceptional series. Although even if it doesn't check all my boxes, which I'm kind of flexible about anyways, Yona of the Dawn is still a 10 out of 10. Next volume is Fallen Love You False Angels volume 3. This starts off with a punch, and the way the situation develops and resolves is something that made me appreciate this series and even decide to pick up the physicals after checking it out on the K-manga app. I think it showed a specific side to love confessions that I don't see often. While the whole premise of the two characters having a personality gap isn't exactly the thing that drew me into the series, it's still refreshing. The two encounter scenarios that draw out that gap moe where they're a bit more brash in their approach towards others, which is nice because I do like headstrong characters that can hold their own. I was highly anticipating this BL I Didn't Mean to Fall in Love double, which is a sequel volume. So the original premise follows Yoshino, who is looking to be intimate with a man for the first time and encounters Ro at a bar. They establish a connection despite their differing lifestyles because Yoshino is a working adult while Ro is a college student. But things eventually develop into a serious relationship. Fast forward into this double volume, their relationship is doing well and Ro has graduated and then enters into the workforce. Time is a bit tight due to demanding schedules, but they try to make it work. While I did think this volume was fine, there was one glaringly annoying thing that happens that made me wonder who would think that this is okay to do when you're in a relationship. Maybe there's a bit of naivety mixed in there, that some decisions were thought to be seemingly harmless, but I was like, oh no, this is a mess in the making. Why did either of them think this was okay? I might just be less trusting, but still. I'm obviously being vague so as to not give away the whole plot, but yeah, this was a weaker volume in my opinion compared to the first one-shot. These next two volumes are ones that I was really looking forward to receiving, and it's Veil volumes 1 and 2 by Koteri, or they also go by Fukuda Ikumi. These are published by Udon Entertainment. Volume 1 in particular was pretty heavily delayed, and I want to say maybe it's because they were printing them in China. Volume 2 released a month later, which was great, and what I was expecting anyways, because that's how it was originally scheduled. But aside from that, the quality is pretty nice with a few details that I did find odd, like how they added this yellow block on the spine for the volume number, which originally this is the obi color of the Japanese volumes, because the actual cover doesn't have this. And then having their logo on the cover itself, I can understand why, since the Japanese covers do this for their publisher, but I don't know, the icon looks a bit silly to me. Maybe it could have just been like the Udon Entertainment text instead or something. And then the inside cover is like a faux French flap. I wish it was an actual French flap, but it's fine. The content itself is stunning, the colors are vibrant, and the paperweight is nice, which at the end of the day, the inside matters most to me. But the story itself is absolutely beautiful in its simplicity of depicting everyday life between this couple through short vignettes. There's a lot of heart and depth that makes the relationship seem so easygoing. It just feels like everything comes natural to them based on their interactions and conversations. And they complement each other so well beyond the fact that the female lead is blind. But I think it's because she's blind that she views things in a way that most overlook. Aside from that, these books are a unique art piece in itself and such a visual delight. I've read up to volume 6, and hopefully Udon doesn't keep us waiting for too long, but at the very least, we have these two volumes with the connecting covers. Next volume is volume 3 of the Korean BL manhwa, The New Recruit. This is the final volume of this series, and what a way to end it. especially if you've read the side stories, which is at the end of this volume. This is one of the first BLs I checked out that I then reread so many times by now. It's nothing revolutionary in terms of the plot since it's an office romance between an intern and his boss, but it does all the basics well in my opinion. You get the chase, the hurt and comfort, the protectiveness, the cute and silly moments, the spice. Plus the art is amazing. At 3 volumes, it's not a super high investment since it's not that long, but I think it's definitely worth reading. I was looking forward to reading this next volume 6 of Our Not So Lonely Planet travel guide because I think every installment of this series brings to light a new conversation or point of contention that Asahi and Mitsuki end up working out together, which I love. This time, they're going to these 4 states in the US, so I was curious how they'd be portrayed. California in particular. They experience the larger food portions, but also how gross public transit can be here. But aside from that, a reoccurring theme that manifests itself in different ways came up when Mitsuki says you won't find happiness comparing yourself to others. Because Asahi ends up thinking of an aspect of life that him and Mitsuki technically won't be able to experience in the same way as your typical male-female couple. But the thing is that they can experience it if they want to, but it'll be different and in a way that works for them. I just really appreciate this series because I think you learn a lot about yourself and your partner when you're traveling together, because sometimes you can be put in stressful situations and it's how you handle them that can be very telling. Alright, moving on to Therapy Game Restart Volume 5. This is probably my most anticipated volume whenever a new volume is slated to be released that year, if one does release in a year. Therapy Game Restart in particular is in my top 10 favorite mangas, so I had to read this immediately upon receiving it. I really appreciate and love the journey that Shizuma and Minato go through, both together and as individuals who are in a relationship and bring baggage with them. I'm not turned off in any way by what either of the two have done to each other in past volumes or the way that they overthink, because it's so real and relatable to me. Their insecurities in particular. And what really solidifies it is the way they communicate and try to reassure the other person to not settle. When Minato is feeling anxious about a situation and would say that he just needs to get used to it, Shizuma tells him no, they should talk about it and see how to work through it. When Shizuma gets self-conscious about whether he's too much, Minato is like, wait, stop. Too much for who? Because he loves it even though he's such a tsundere about it. They're so perfect for each other despite their flaws or the mistakes they make along the way. There's also a side plot going on that is gradually getting more fleshed out regarding Shizuma's director at the vet clinic he works at, so I wonder what direction that will go. But I adore how this volume ended so much, and the next volume can't release any sooner. This next volume I picked up in person at the Animate store, and it's On and Off Work-Life Imbalance, Volume 1 by Shinosuke Kanazawa, published by Square Enix. Okay, not gonna lie, before I started reading, I thought this was going to be a GL. I had seen people mentioning this series on Instagram, but this was a cover buy for me because I didn't know anything about it and I didn't look it up prior to. But anyways, this centers around 2 co-workers, Amata and Hanku. Amata is well-liked and good at his job, while Hanku is more to herself and a little bit more intense, especially regarding work ethics and quality. However, outside of work, Amata loves dressing in the Lolita fashion with the frills and layered details, while Hanku is way more punk and edgy. Not too much goes on in this volume, and it feels a bit repetitive with constantly showcasing their switch between their personas, but they do have a run-in with each other while in their off-hours outfits, and it looks like they connect more than you'd think. I'm curious if there will be a bit more depth to them and their interactions in future volumes. A little side note, while I was at Animate, my friend June's manga had surprised me and gotten me this My Dress Up Darling acrylic standee, which I'm so grateful for. It's this chibi Maiden dressed up as Black Lobelia. I've mentioned many times that this cosplay is my favorite, and I've been dying to see a figure made so I can snag it right away. Unfortunately, the 1-scale figure for this cosplay hasn't had any updates since it was first announced 2 years ago. Someone did reach out to the manufacturer, Clockworks, and they said they're still working on it, but this was 8 months ago. So while I continue waiting, this acrylic will hold me over. Alright, back to the manga. I got Virgin Marriage Volume 2, Another super cute and spicy volume as Kurumi and Keiichiro go on a date and then celebrate their wedding anniversary. I love how they're increasingly more comfortable with each other. Both characters are so charming, and I'll never get over how wholesome their relationship is. I saw that this series actually ends on the 4th volume, which I'm sad to see that it's this short because I really love everything about this series, from the story, the characters, and especially the art. But I'll be checking to see what this author and artist duo are working on from time to time. And last volume for this video is Toilet Ban Hanako-kun Volume 22. I recently reread Volume 20 for a refresher since it's been almost a year since I last read it, and then I read Volumes 21 and 22. There's a lot of scheming going on, with the reasons behind them still being a bit of a mystery, but these 2 volumes focus on the number 1 of the 7 mysteries, the Clock Keepers. Hanako and Yashiro continue to go through it, and this feels a little bit like another climax in the story because the Clock Keepers, Yorishiro, is the last one to be dealt with. So what that means after, I don't know, but something's gonna go down, and I hope everyone will be okay. I'm constantly wondering what Hanako and Yashiro's fate will end up being, as well as several of the other characters, but particularly the 2 main characters, since Hanako is a ghost and Yashiro's life is on the line. Thankfully, I don't have to wait too long because Volume 23 releases in October. So that's all for this haul. Let me know what you've picked up lately and your thoughts about them, if you've read any that I mentioned here, and what you're looking forward to most in the coming months. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care!